The rain had just stopped when she arrived. The old cemetery, silent and soaked in the gray light of dawn, smelled of wet earth and forgotten memories. Her trembling hands clutched a small bunch of wilted flowers, white lilies she had bought for half their price the night before from a street vendor who pitied her. Her shoes were torn, her shawl faded from years of use, but her eyes carried something deeper than poverty, grief, love, and a devotion that didn't die even when the person she loved did. Every Sunday, without fail, she came. The guards knew her. The gardener nodded in quiet respect whenever he saw her walking slowly between the graves, holding those flowers close to her chest as though they were something sacred. If you believe in kindness, love, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Stories like this remind us that compassion still exists, even in the loneliest corners of life. Her name was Amira. Once she had been full of dreams of a small home, a husband, a family. But life had different plans. Her husband, Faisal, had died in a construction accident years ago while trying to build a better future for them. The company never paid the full compensation they promised. Amira was left with nothing except a few memories, a framed photo, and a grave she visited every Sunday. That grave, covered in cracked stone and worn letters, became her only sanctuary. She talked to it, cried beside it, even smiled sometimes when the wind carried the scent of lilies. Years passed like pages in a forgotten diary. The city around her changed, new buildings rose, people became busier, and the cemetery grew more crowded. But Amira never missed a Sunday. She'd clean the gravestone, arrange the flowers neatly, and whisper the same words every time. "I didn't forget you, Faisal, not even once." She never noticed that someone else had started coming to the same cemetery around the same time. A tall man in a black suit, polished shoes, and eyes that hid storms behind their calmness. His name was Rayyan Malik, one of the most powerful CEOs in the city. To the world, he was the image of success, a man with everything. But no one knew that every Sunday morning before the world woke up, Rayyan came to the same graveyard to sit beside a marble grave with a single engraved name, Layla Malik, his late wife. Rayyan's wife had died in a car accident 3 years ago. She had been kind, gentle, and full of life. Her death had shattered him. He threw himself into work, building his empire higher, hoping the noise of meetings and the glow of screens would drown the silence of her absence. But grief is a stubborn thing. It waits, it lingers, it whispers in the quiet hours. So, every Sunday, Rayyan returned to her grave, bringing fresh white lilies, the same flowers she had loved. It was one Sunday morning when their paths crossed for the first time. Amira had arrived early, kneeling beside her husband's grave, brushing away dust and fallen leaves. The flowers she carried looked small and humble compared to the rich bouquets that filled other graves nearby. She didn't notice the shadow that fell beside her until she heard a soft sound, a man clearing his throat. She looked up and froze. A man in a black suit stood a few steps away, holding a bouquet of lilies just like hers. Their eyes met, strangers connected by a quiet, shared pain. At first, neither spoke. Rayyan nodded politely and walked past her to a grave just a few feet away. He placed the flowers gently, his expression unreadable, then stood still for a long time. Amira watched him silently. There was something haunting about the way he stood. Strong yet broken, wealthy yet empty. When she finally left, she glanced once more at him and wondered what kind of loss could wound even the richest heart that deeply. From that day on, their Sundays intertwined without intention. Week after week, Amira came with her small bouquet, and Rayyan came with his perfect lilies. They rarely exchanged words, but their silent presence became familiar. Sometimes, Rayyan would arrive earlier and notice how Amira carefully cleaned not only her husband's grave, but others nearby, the ones no one visited anymore. He began leaving extra flowers on those forgotten graves too, following her quiet example. Then came the Sunday that changed everything. The morning was colder than usual, the wind sharp and the sky heavy with clouds. Amira arrived later than usual, her steps slower. She carried the flowers wrapped in newspaper, her hands trembling from the chill. When she reached the familiar spot, she froze. Someone had already cleaned her husband's grave. The stone was freshly washed, the soil around it neatly arranged, and in the center lay a stunning bouquet of white lilies. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. Who could have done this? She sat down slowly, tears filling her eyes. She touched the lilies as though afraid they might disappear. Then she heard that same calm voice behind her, a voice she had only heard in passing before. "You come here every week," the man said gently. "I see you. You remind me of someone I used to know, someone who loved deeply." She turned and saw Rayon standing there, the wind tugging at his coat, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. He looked at the grave beside hers and then at the one she was kneeling beside. "That's my wife's grave," he said quietly, nodding toward the next plot. "Layla Malik. She passed away 3 years ago, and this one—" He glanced at the gravestone Amira had tended for years. "They're side by side because they were buried together after the accident." Amira stared at him, confused. Her lips trembled. "What do you mean, together?" Rayan sighed, his voice breaking slightly. "Your husband, Faisal, was the driver that day. The accident took them both. The company never told you the truth, did they? I found his name in the report months later. He tried to save her. He didn't run. He stayed until the very last moment." Amira's heart stopped. The world seemed to blur. She remembered the day she got the call. The police saying her husband had died in an accident, nothing more. She had lived all these years thinking he died alone, unnoticed. Now, hearing that he had died trying to save another life, a stranger's wife, something inside her shifted. Her tears fell freely, not just from sorrow but from pride. Rayan knelt beside her, his own eyes wet. "I've been meaning to find you, to thank you, to tell you your husband was a hero. My wife's last words, according to the report, were that he was trying to pull her out of the car. He didn't deserve to be forgotten." Silence hung between them, a silence heavy with pain and gratitude. The rain began again, softly at first, then harder, washing the graves clean as if the heavens themselves wept for them both. Rayan took off his coat and placed it gently around Amira's shoulders. "You don't have to come here alone anymore," he said quietly. "They're resting together. Maybe we can honor them together too." From that day on, every Sunday, 2 figures could be seen walking side by side through the quiet cemetery. One poor woman in a worn shawl, and one powerful man in a black coat, united by grief, gratitude, and the memory of 2 souls who met by fate. Rayan began helping Amira quietly. He made sure she had a proper home, a small garden where she could grow the lilies she loved. But he never treated her like a charity case. He treated her like family. In her, he found the gentleness his heart had lost. In him, she found the strength her life had lacked. The people who worked at the cemetery often said they'd never seen anything like it. Every Sunday, Amira would still bring her own flowers, simple and fresh, while Rayan brought a bouquet of white lilies for both graves. They never missed a week, not even in storms, not even in sickness. It became a ritual of healing, of remembering that love, in its truest form, never dies. It only changes form and finds new ways to bloom. One spring morning, years later, Amira stood beside Rayan as the sun rose golden over the graves. She smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "Maybe they're happy," she whispered. "Wherever they are, maybe they found peace before we did." Rayan nodded, his voice soft. "And maybe we were meant to find each other too, to remind the world that love doesn't end, it only changes hands." If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. These stories live on because of your kindness and faith in humanity. Before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe some souls are meant to meet even through grief? And as the camera fades on the image of 2 graves side by side, each covered in white lilies, the words linger softly, "Love never leaves. It just finds another way to stay."